Hey guys, Pete here. This is my Q&A from the last two videos that I put out. Twin Peaks Season 3, Episode 5, Recap and Review, and the 10 things you might have missed in Episode 5 or Part 5. Spoiler warning, if you haven't watched up until this part of the series, then you will be spoiled. So go watch something else. So yeah, you guys asked a lot of questions, which is awesome, and I'm going to do my best to answer, and if not, then expand on the question and think about what we should be questioning, I guess, would be the way to put it. So I'll start out, and there are quite a few of these, so I'll try to go fast. If you have more, want more clarification, just bring it up in the comments. Are the prints Tammy is looking at backwards? This is a little bit tricky, and I mentioned it briefly in my 10 things you might have missed video. On the screen, we see two sets of prints, and we see that one of the prints, the left ring finger, seems to be mirrored. This is where it gets complicated because the writing on that one is also mirrored. Like it says 9 left ring or whatever, and it's backwards. So the actual print is not mirrored. It's exactly the same. It's just the picture's flipped around, as best I can tell. So what does that mean? No idea. It could mean that Evil Coop has a different left ring finger and he had to alter the records, which we know he has some technical savvy. Or it could mean that that's a continuity error or a production error, that those letters weren't supposed to be backwards, because the ones above aren't backwards. Or it could mean that she turned that particular print for some reason and not the other ones. And yeah, we don't know. We know there's something up with the prints. On the screen, they're mirror images, but the lettering is backwards, so make what you will of all that. Philip Jeffries was in Argentina, right? Yes, that's definitely true. When I said that we hadn't been to Argentina in the show, I was talking specifically about the show. Philip Jeffries was in Gordon Cole's office and he disappeared in Firewalk with Me. But he was known to be in Argentina and he was known to disappear there. So when you watch The Missing Pieces, he actually sort of teleports to Buenos Aires, and we see him show up there, and it's a funny scene where there's a guy standing there who crapped his pants, basically, and So Jeffries is associated with Argentina. Anything that's related to Argentina in the current season should raise Philip Jeffries flags. Next question, has anyone mentioned the tags on the plate of Dougie's car are from 2003? Now this was something that I had to go and look into a little bit closer. The license plate here does have an 03, which makes you think maybe that means 2003, but I used to live in the States and I remember that this is something that you got pulled over for all the time if you weren't careful. And the system works as it's your vehicle registration. Each year has a color so that the police officer can note it from a distance, and the number of the year is actually printed small, and the big number is the month. And different states are different, so I looked specifically for Las Vegas, Nevada is the state. And yeah, that's the way it works. The big number is 3, so this vehicle registration expires in March of whatever year that sticker is for. So this is actually debunked as a clue. I've never been a big fan of the theory that, there's a different timeline here. So I'm a little bit biased, but this question is easy to answer, and that is that it's not from 2003. Anyone else notice the Morley cigarettes? And yes, I did, and most people who are X-Files fans or were X-Files fans will remember that the Smoking Man, who was a mysterious character in that television series, used to smoke Morleys. Morleys are a prop cigarette brand. There are several prop brands if you think about it. They use it because there's no product placement or anything like that. So it's actually shown up in a lot of things, but yeah, it's cool that that it's so prominent in here because it does give a nod, whether that was intentional or not, to the X-Files. Next question, what is the newspaper article behind Norma in the Double R say? If you remember, she's sitting there at the desk, she's sort of watching as Becky comes in, she's doing her work in her little booth where she often sits. And what it says is something to the extent of Double R Diner wins award for best takeout food. Now that doesn't necessarily mean anything, and this could have happened at any time. You see that they have the Double R to go quite a bit on all the stuff that's new. Some people quickly jump to the assumption that this is an alternate timeline where, or alternate reality, I guess would be the right way to say that, like where her mother gave them a good award. But it could be any magazine or newspaper. It's a newspaper. It could be any newspaper, and it could have happened at any time in the last 25 years. So I don't think it's anything that we need to pay too much attention to at this point. Next question, why the spooky music when the mom wakes up? Well, I mentioned the music in general in my 10 Things You Might Have Missed video, and I think that it is an indication that something is going on there. I mean, I know that's vague, but the music has been sparse, so when it does show up, it's probably for a reason. It may take more evidence to figure out what those reasons are and a thorough review of what, when that comes up or whatever. But I think, it could be a lot of things here. And that's why I'm not really going to pick or, tie myself to one. But think about all the different things that are happening there and remember that the music is, in fact, probably quite important since we don't hear very much of it. Next question, maybe Evil Coop hired the woman to kill Dougie Coop, and maybe they communicate through the black box. Yes and yes. I think when we look at the, definitely somebody was after Dougie, the real Dougie. That's who his wife's talking about. She wants him to pay back the 50 grand because somebody is upset about that. On the other hand, these people who we've seen since Cooper started living in Dougie's life are most likely hired by Evil Coop. He coordinated the switch, and he's the one who benefits the most from getting rid of the original Coop. So yeah, I think that's fair to say. Now we have the guys in the black car. Those guys might be related to the people who were upset about the 50 grand, and whatever. We don't know for sure. We'll keep an eye on it. Next question: what is the black box in the wooden bowl? Well, I think we touched on it in the last question. It is a communication device. How it works, not really sure. Who's communicating to who? Well, it seems like Evil Cooper's definitely involved, maybe Philip Jeffries because the box is in Argentina, so on and so forth. We don't really know, but that Evil Coop was communicating with someone who was either Philip Jeffries or impersonating Philip Jeffries through that communication device he had in the briefcase. So I'm sure this is all similar equipment that he has access to. Next question, how does the FBI have a picture of Cooper in the Red Room? Now, this is related to what Tammy's looking at, and I admit that whenever I read this the first time, I looked and I said, holy crap, that is the Red Room. But if you look at it a little bit closer and kind of zoom in, it is not actually the Red Room. It is the wood paneling, which someone pointed out is probably when he was interviewed, when he was suspended from the FBI in the Twin Peaks Sheriff Department, which is completely paneled in wood paneling for the most part. So yeah, that looks like the Red Room. It almost looks like they might have added a red tint to the original photograph, but it is wood paneling, not a curtain behind him. Next question, could the guy in the bar be Audrey's son? And the answer to this is yes. Does that mean that he is Audrey's son? The answer to that is no. But yes, she is a woman of childbearing age, and he was born since the last series happened, so it is definitely very possible. And I'm just going to leave it at that because it's as big, I talked about it before and there's a lot of speculation we can do, but the question was, is it possible? The answer is yes. Next question, did anyone else notice Sonny Jim blinking backwards? I'm keeping this simple as well. I did not notice a backwards blink, but yes, hundreds if not thousands of people say that they noticed that, and it's very possible that it happened. What it means or why it's there, I have no idea. I mean, obviously the theory is that this has something to do with the lodge because things happen backwards in the lodge, but we don't have enough to go on to say anything else about that. Next question, is Evil Coop's hair long because of Bob? Well, that could be the case. The person who asked the question mentioned Leland's hair turning white. I think really what, we should keep in mind here is that Evil Coop is a doppelganger possessed by a spirit from the lodges. So whenever they developed a brand new character and they wanted it to be noticeably different than clean-cut Agent Cooper. So I think him having a bad haircut and, kind of dressing like, I don't know how to describe it, but just bad, I guess, is all part of highlighting the difference. There is an article or an interview out there with Kyle MacLachlan where he talks about the creative process behind creating the character and how he threw in his 2 cents that maybe they should use black contacts, and David Lynch, agreed, and they did that. So yeah, I think it's just more to I mean, it's hilarious. Let's not forget that. He's got a really funny look. And the opening scene where he comes out of the car is just one of the top moments of ever in Twin Peaks, I think. But yeah, I don't know that Bob's influences has something to do with his hair or not. Next question, is it possible that Richard Horne is the Richard the Giant was talking about? Yes, absolutely. The answer is yes. I don't know if it is, but that was a conspicuous 2 names that we got in the very opening part of this season. And this is the first new cast member that we have run into with the name Richard. So I think there's a good chance. Might not be right, but we'll find out. Next question, are the words Dougie Coop is picking up on important? I think so, yes. I mean, in the beginning, he is picking up on everything, and then in the recent episode, he's picking up on things that are related to his own, his own personality or his own personal makeup, whatever you want to say. He's picking up on things that are related to his job and things that he's starting to remember is what the implication is. So, yeah. Next question. It isn't Dougie. It is the real Cooper returning to his old self, right? Yes. I call him Dougie Cooper for a couple reasons. 1, because he's living Dougie's life right now. And 2, because I like to say the word Dougie. And I'm not going to probably stop calling him Dougie Coop until that whole charade ends. At the same time, the real Dougie is gone. He's been replaced. This whole thing is a massive scheme to keep Evil Coop out of the lodge. So I did a whole Dougie video. Some of you have seen that, and I'll be touching on more of this in part 2 of that. But yeah, it is Agent Cooper. He's just living somebody else's life at the moment. Next question, is Dougie Coop looking at the statue because it resembles Harry S. Truman? That is possible. This is interesting, but a lot of people have thoughts about this statue. I've been told as a factual piece of evidence that it is David Bowie, and that's because it's he plays Philip Jeffries. Things like that. What I know about the statue is, yes, it's a prop. It doesn't belong there. They brought it in. I've seen a thread where someone who worked at the building showed a picture without it, blah, blah, blah. And from what I understand, the actual statue was not fashioned after David Bowie or Harry S. Truman. It was fashioned after David Lynch's father. And yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be a law enforcement person because he is connecting with these ideas that, as he's starting to put his memory back together or whatever. So yeah, it could be that, but it could be a lot of things. Next question, what happened to the vomit? Yeah, as far as I know, they're still analyzing it. And we can say what happened to the investigation around the glass box. We haven't really seen that part of the story move forward in part 5. We did see Tammy, but she didn't speak. She didn't give us any clues as to what's going on in that. So yeah, I'm sure now that he's made that call, the warden will talk to Gordon, and maybe we'll find out more about the ongoing investigation at that point. Next question, what happened to Laura? That's a good question, and it's one, frankly, that I don't think we're supposed to know the answer to. There's nothing clear in any evidence that we would know where she went. So I'll leave that at that. Next question, wouldn't Shelley's kid have a different name? This, her last name is Johnson. She was married to Leo Johnson, or it was last that we knew. And Becky is her daughter. She mentions that her daughter's with the wrong guy and so on and so forth. And we know that she's with Steven. They both have the same last name. They're probably married. Next question, what will happen if Cooper has some cherry pie? This is in relation to the coffee. And yeah, maybe it could be that quirky that's the missing ingredient here for him waking up completely, but I kind of hope not. We'll see what happens, but yeah, it's a funny question either way. Next question, what if the key is the key to the whole thing? And then this is talking about maybe the Great Northern, somewhat Native American related. I think 2 things here. I think Hawk is the most overlooked thing in the whole transfer from the lodge scenario, which I hope to touch on more soon. And the other thing is, yes, I think the key is the whole thing, but to the story shifting focus back to Twin Peaks. We know that Key's en route. We know it'll arrive. Things will fall into place. I don't know how fast, but one way or another, this is going to lead to the idea of where Agent Cooper is currently at, and I'm sure this is going to involve the Twin Peaks Sheriff Department and most likely the FBI. So yeah, I think the key is super important, and I don't know. I mean, I think the Hawk stuff is related to his Nez Perce heritage, not just being an Indian, but we'll find out. Next, what is the secret history of Twin Peaks? And that is a good question. If you don't know, it's a novel. It's not necessarily a book that is in a traditional book. It's put together as a dossier, and I can't spoil it, so I won't go into the details of that too much. But Mark Frost, the co-creator, wrote it. It came out just before season 3, or a few months before, and super interesting. There's a link in my description where you can learn more about that. There's a link in all the descriptions of my videos to that. And basically, it's a book that fills in some of the blanks, and then there's another one scheduled for after season 3 concludes called The Final Dossier that's supposed to fill in more. So go through the link if you want, or just Google Secret History and you can find out more about that. And the last question for the day, is it really Twin Peaks anymore? So yeah, I think, in my opinion, it is. I think it's exactly what it should be as far as where it, I mean, it's been 25 years, and the reality is the people in that town, in that community, have lived their lives for that period of time. Now, is it Twin Peaks in the sense that everything is exactly the same? No, but I don't think it should be. I think it's really interesting that this episode seemed to put people on both sides really polarizing in a way, sort of like episode 3 was, or part 3 was, in that some people loved it and some people hated it. I think, my thinking is that the creators, the showrunners, they would probably like that. Because, they're trying to make something based off work that they did quite a while ago, and they're trying to make it fresh and interesting. And I think that, it's not important that every episode is to everyone's liking. I mean, you can't, as being creative, you can't expect to connect with everybody, or, the old saying, you can't please all the people all the time. And I think, the basic premise of why Twin Peaks became so popular, especially with the general public, was the mystery around, the way that it presented mystery, and it presented all these characters, and it made you want to try to figure out what was going on. I think this is the same thing. It might be on steroids at this point, because we're looking at a longer run that is, more tightly controlled by the two creative forces behind it. But yeah, I think it's great. I think it's just evolved. We're all 25 years older, and let's see what happens, man. I'm optimistic. We'll have to see what goes on, but I think it is. I think it's true to the process, to the experience of the first one. We're just at a different time, and this is a different installment. All right, thanks so much for all the questions and interaction. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy the feedback, both positive and, things that I can improve on. I'll do my best to do that all the time. Got a couple things planned for the weekend, and then we get part 6. So yeah, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, check through the playlist. There's a lot of different ones that I've been putting out, and thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.